Hey, thanks for downloading, watching, and listening to the Lean Into Artcast, a show where a couple of visual storytellers get together, think about different kinds of topics that naturally emerge when you try to create things to communicate ideas visually. We think hard about this stuff, so you will too. My name is Jerzy Drozd. I am a cartoonist and teaching artist, and the other host is...
Oh, hi, I'm Rob Stenzinger. I am a user experience and game designer.
Hey, Rob.
Hi, Jerzy.
Hey. And we're back again with another episode. And I guess, has anything big happened since the last time we talked to each other? Is there anything we need to check in on?
Oh, let me think here. What would be big? Is this, is there something I'm forgetting? I was actually considering a special segment called How's Your Cat? But other than that, I don't know.
I don't have a stinger for that. How's my cat? Maggie's fine. She's got arthritis. She's incredibly old, and she's got high blood pressure, and she's got a heart murmur, but she's still kicking. She's still around. But that's what are you gonna do? That's what happens when you have animals for a long time, and they live a long time. And that means it's more time for you to love them and see them all the way to the very end. But right now she's okay. But no, there wasn't a hint about anything. That was more or less of like, I was just about ready to dive into the topic, and then I thought, should I step back and have a casual moment to say like everything interesting going on in your life right now?
Oh, nothing comes to mind. I really did actually think, what if we added a segment called "How's Your Cat?" And I mean, honestly, I have a cat too. So like,
how is Paper?
Paper's doing well. She had a little bit of a like an eye infection thing. We think because she crawls up in the ceiling and I think inspects the insulation up in there, and
poor
something
kid.
maybe scratched her eye, but she's doing fine. We've got little eye drops and stuff, and
that's got to be fun.
It's not. I thought it was going to be terrible. I thought she would, resist and really have none of it. But she's been fine. I would assume because of treat bribing, but there you go. Bribes go a long way.
Yeah, my old boy Lau, before he passed, we had to give him actual water injections in his back because he had like kidney problems, like really advanced kidney disease, and so we would have to like pin him down and hold the scruff of his neck and take this syringe connected to an IV and actually inject, I forget what the actual dosage was every night. And like,
Wow.
Like the vet was walking us through it saying like, okay, just make sure that there's like really, really good treats afterwards. So he gets acclimated to like, okay, when this happens, something awesome happens right after that. It didn't diminish the growling and the grief that he gave us during those sessions, but yeah, supposedly cats are creatures of habit, right?
Yeah, they seem to be at least mildly trainable. Not that I'm an expert in any way.
Right. We're just enthusiasts.
Yeah. Yes. Is there a segue in there?
No.
Ham-handed. So
no, there was a moment of time where you get to look into our lives and see the kinds of things that we sweat and think about besides visual storytelling.
Yeah. Exactly. Don't we all?
You know what? There was a fortuitous message we got from a leaner this past week that I say fortuitous because I am about to start dropping updates, teaser art for a project I'm working on with Dan Mishkin, which has yet to be named. I might have named it in some other places, I don't know, but I've been told not to name it yet. And it's a comic that we've been talking about doing since like 2012, and I'm in the process of thumbnailing the book right now while Dan's writing the script, and character designs are done, final art, I'm starting penciling this week. And this whole idea, I just met with Dan like last week to talk about this idea of like, how are we thinking about launching this thing? How are we thinking about making the world aware of it? Do we do a big, like, in 5 days, August 31st is X day for this thing that's coming out? Or do we do, something more squishy and malleable where it's like, let's leave some teaser art, like trail of breadcrumbs on the ground. And when it happens, and we'll notify people about it, but we won't try to make like a big fuss over it. We'll because, you know, when the Rockets came out, it's like we did like June 12th is Rocket Day. Buy the show, or take a picture of the book in a store on this day, and we'll send you a card. You know, uh, what about the people who discover that social media post 3 days later because everything's like algorithmatized, right?
Mm.
You're not necessarily getting it the day that it was dropped. So I don't know, a lot to think about there. But do we want to jump into the message from the leaner to
Yeah,
give it context?
let's do that. We've got a lot of things to unpack from this message.
Okay, you want me to read it, or do you want to?
Oh, let's see. I would say it was sent initially to you. It included us, right?
Mm-hmm.
But why don't
That's
you
right.
start? And maybe, yeah, I'm
Okay.
happy to hand off at the maybe here are my questions part. I don't know.
Well, this comes from Leaner Mushin Girl, and I'm going to just like I'm going to cherry pick some of the ideas in it rather than reading the entire message. Not for brevity's sake, but because I don't want to reveal too much sensitive information that may be in there. Um, so Mushin Girl is getting ready to preparing the web footprint for a brand launch later this year. And they say, I am stalling in one area and hoping for any insight or advice you can share. The words, quote unquote, brand launch makes it sound a lot cooler than it is. I just finished my website and I've decided which platforms I'm going to be active on while I try to put some art and put out some art and fiction. Patreon is one of those platforms, and I have been preparing my profile to share. I'm struggling with solutions to questions you and Brandon touched on in the Lean Into Art you reposted last week. And that was the one with webcomics, To Whom Are You Accountable episode, I think 114. Um, what am I what am I planning to produce? What am I asking my patrons to support? Here are my questions. How do you come to select the tiers you use? How demanding is the schedule you have committed to for your online presence? And do you think it's pretentious or presumptuous to ask for patrons to support all of my creative output on a basic level? Is that too broad a scope to solicit? Um, and then there's some nice, very kind words that Mushin Girl said about the stuff that we do. Thank you so much, Mushin Girl, for saying those things. It means a lot to us. Now, do we want to dive into the topic and start to unpack all these things?
Yeah, I think there's a lot in there. I mean, we all, the topic of this episode is launching a product.
Mm-hmm.
Chances are every single listener of this show, it has multiple times in the past, and at least in is probably currently dealing with or about to deal with this. So this is going to be an interesting exercise, both for I think for all of us.
Oh, yeah. Yes. And it's something that I think will be a recurring topic if you pursue a a path through the creative arts. So with
Hmm.
that, we'll hit the music to bridge us over.
Okay,
Let
all
us
flight
know that we are now
controllers,
in the
gonna
first
go
section of
for
the show.
solid descent.
Time to
Go,
go.
go, Fido, go, guidance,
Think hard on this stuff.
roll, go.
All right.
Go, Jinsei, go.
Where do you want to start,
Decon,
Rob?
go.
What are you thinking?
Surgeon, go.
One way of framing, sometimes we frame topics as like, here's the practical in hands-on aspect, and then we go into theory and whatnot. That's a fine way to do it. Another way to do it is to think about things in time frames, and you can chunk out concerns from, you wanted to analyze a problem. You think about, well, what are things leading up to this situation? What about during the situation? What about after? And then so I thought maybe we could do that with this with these questions. We think about things that are needed before the launch would be an interesting place to start.
Mm-hmm.
And Mushin Girl asked about the in some ways my paraphrasing as I mean we're naturally unboxing questions as we go. We'll touch back to them, try to mention them. We'll also be paraphrasing and whatnot. And one of the things that I felt was part of the Mushin Girls exploration was thinking about tools for the launch and side effects of the tools, and then
Mm-hmm.
and the mention of Patreon, right? So what what kind of like I guess how do you think of uh, the tools, and especially something like that's a platform like Patreon, right? I mean, it's almost like well, you have two Patreon campaigns, right? There's the one for Lean Into Art or
Mm-hmm.
campaigns, presences, I suppose.
Yeah, I guess so. It's an ongoing thing rather than
Yeah.
like a box thing within a certain time frame, right?
Yeah, yeah. And there's, I mean, there's a lot. Like we actually talked about Patreon a while back with John Rosenberg. I think it was episode
That was like
99.
episode 99.
Yeah.
It was a while ago, yeah. And we had
And
a lot of discussions between the two of us after that, before launching the Lean Into Art Patreon. And I can't remember offhand what all those discussions were. I have a vague sense of what we arrived at when we said, like, we're just gonna have one tier, just like the dollar, or you pick your price. Right? Do you remember anything about what we talked about with that?
I really empathize with our past us, right? Because I fall into this all the time, and it's something that I'm trying to improve at. And I think what we did was, we didn't want to be prescriptive and
That's right.
overly
That's right.
selling, right? So
That's right. Oh, that's so funny. Younger
yeah,
us.
look
It's
at
not
us.
that wasn't long ago. It was not that long ago.
And
But yes.
so like I would say we both seem to be in a situation where it's like we're trying to go a little bit further than that, because in some ways adding somewhere beyond one choice and less than a ton of choices, that it's probably a service, like that in and of itself, of how you're presenting this this mechanism for an audience who inherently wants to support you. And by having, like, for instance, our camp, for Lean Into Art, we have only one level. I don't think that's a great idea anymore. And then you run into the whole, like, a couple of, not to just jump past this part. I think we're going to loop. I might hit a couple of aspects of Motion Girl's questions, because it's sort of the, what are you setting up, and why are you setting it up that way with, okay, this is a mechanism. You're planting a flag saying, here's where you can come support me at this venue, and then offer hopefully more than one support level. But then what's implied with the work that you're committing to for the different support levels? And that's where we also got hung up on that as well. And because we're like, well, I mean, it's the podcast, right? And the puzzle is, it's like it's not only about the work. It's actually about, like, I thought you did a good job with this on your presence for your work, and including Boulder and Fleet, where you created sort of a different levels of support and value that, let's see, like, tell me you're thinking about your campaign you put out there.
So, well,
It's not a campaign. Gosh darn it. It's a
presence.
It's a presence.
Yes.
There we go.
On my Patreon, I pulled up mine and I pulled up Zach, so we could look at his too, Zach Giolongo's. So I came up with personas, right? This is based on all the years of working with you. As I thought, okay, can I come up with a generalization for like 3 versions of the people who have interacted with my work, right? And so, the $1 tier is Team Boulder. You're on Team Boulder because you're a roaming friendly bear, and you're helping me because you believe in the work that I'm doing. Thank you. It means a lot, And it's like there'll be stuff that I post only in the Patreon feed that, like, all, it'll be behind the Patreon wall for everybody to enjoy, and you'll get access to that stuff. Then the second tier is Team Pickles. And Team Pickles is, your enthusiasm for the comic is enough to win over even the grumpiest adversaries. As a thank you for your cheerful support, Team Pickles supporters will receive access to the Patreon blog, plus Fabulous Secrets podcast that I produce every once in a while. Like, sort of an intimate journal cast that I do, sort of like Thunder Punch Daily, but even more, I think, unguarded. Because I figure, like, if you're committing $3 a month, that's not an insubstantial amount of money, right? That's like half of a Netflix subscription. And I know that money's tight for all creative people, so it's like, okay, I want to honor that contribution with something where you have a little bit more, I don't want to say access to me, but you get a more unguarded version of me than what you would normally get. Like, I'm recognizing that commitment, and I'm honoring it with an equal commitment in terms of intimacy. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then the last tier, because I wanted to keep it simple, 1, 2, 3. Team Fleet is the final tier. It's like you believe in the adventure, but you also believe in the importance of putting cake on the table, right? So Team Fleet supporters get all the other benefits plus access to monthly live streams, which, in retrospect, if I were to like chime in on, like, offer some like sidebar notes on that, the live stream thing, I thought it would be more of a service. While the videos get watched a little bit, nobody shows up for the live stream because I usually only am able to do it on like a Sunday afternoon, and nobody else seems to be available at that time. I guess if I were to play with doing it like on like a Tuesday night or something like that, at a time that where more time zones could participate in it, and that was like more conducive to people who are having their non-family leisure time, maybe. I even tried doing some live streams at like in the afternoons during the workday, but that was also a bust because people have day jobs. Not everybody's working from home, and those who are working from home are working. They don't necessarily want to watch another person draw. So I've had difficulty in trying to figure out what to do to make that exchange more equitable. However, I did, and I think I talked about this on the Lead Into Art cast at one point. A while back when I was working on Rockets, I didn't update my Patreon very much at all because I was working so hard on the book. I didn't have time to generate anything else. There was no sawdust generated that would be worthwhile to put on the Patreon or that I was able to share on the Patreon. And I issued a sort of pseudo apology, like, "Hey guys, I'm really sorry I haven't been here in a while, and thank you all for sticking around because I don't think I lost any supporters." And a couple people chimed in and said, like, "Hey, look, we're here because we want to see you work on stuff that you're excited about." Like they were very not, I'm trying to say, they were not very demanding. Like their terms are very straightforward. Do stuff that is exciting to you and share it with us here. That's why we're here. And I thought, what a marvelous signal to get. So, yeah.
Well, which is an interesting thing to highlight, that Patreon is creating a patron model, which should be, obvious in some ways. And one of the models where someone could be a patron of the arts is literally just support the artist, and that, as you described, the reaction from some of your patrons was, yeah, just keep doing what you do, and we want to see you be successful. And that makes a lot of sense. It's a different kind of transaction. So it is a connection with a creator. There is some kind of value that you're exchanging, but it's not as direct as getting someone to purchase a product based on clicking an ad, and then all the value is wrapped up in I'm into this product. It's not that kind of transaction, which is that's really it's really interesting. It seems like it's this natural evolution. I think we talked about this way back on the John Rosenberg episode, where it's kind of like a massive evolution of the PayPal tip jar.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that kind of audience is they have this now a lot easier outlet to participate with supporting artists. So it's it's creating a different kind of market.
But what do you have to respond to with regard to the tiers and defining the tiers that way?
So, let's see. We probably could do some exploration and reverse engineer, and also look at probably research others have done on this, right? And I have not. I have not done that recently. It's been years since I've dug into how are other folks setting up their tiers on Patreon, and how, other than how I would think of it, it's like as you described, somehow the intersection between personas and sawdust that I have naturally, and potentially additional experimental bandwidth, but I would take that really cautiously as far as thinking of creating new products for this audience. and not in a way of being stingy with your time. It's just that your time is such a valuable resource, and your patrons are here probably to help free you up to, for you to have your best ideal application of your own time, and probably not to tie you up into some ongoing, tangle of arrangements that are meeting some level of tiers commitments. I doubt that that's the main motivator for patrons. And if it is, then maybe there's just an easy transactional thing you can give away when people, sign up or make their first payment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's thinking of personas, thinking of like how could you? I think you did a fantastic job of theming these different almost levels of excitement for your work, and then it's a puzzle of what are the appropriate buckets of value for the tiers, right? Because I've actually, I support creators that some, like many of them I'll do $1 a month, and then maybe their lowest tier is $5, but here I am at $1, but they're accepting it. And I may not be getting like material associated with that, but I'm, doing the transaction I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that could go either direction. So people could, and have, like we've experienced this with Lean Into Art, where we've got it's a $1 tier, right? And
right.
People have gone, nicely above that.
Yeah, that's true.
And
I think our rationale. I remember us having discussions back before we started the Patreon with Ryan Estrada, where we talked about like the pay what you want model a little bit. And I remember a lot of our ongoing discussion back then was put a price of 0 on it, and you'll be surprised how much people will pay. And sure enough, I mean, the leanintoart.com/workshops page, which we promote at the end of every episode of the show, every once in a while, I'll get somebody purchasing Comics Fundamentals off of there. Sometimes they download it for free, and sometimes they pay more than what I would have put as a price tag on it, and who knows what kind of psychology is all going into that. That would be research that we didn't do before this episode. But the fact of the matter is,
other than we've been living it, right? We
Yes.
have been living this experiment. A couple of, and in your case too. So
yeah,
it's but it is a deep topic, and I think, as we'll get into in the second half of this episode, there's another giant variable in all of what we're talking about, because we're talking about things before the launch. You're thinking through, like, where will people land, and what is this thing I'm trying to get them to land on? And if it's a Patreon presence, then you'll be thinking of tiers, and what are you offering for these different tiers? You could literally offer nothing but thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously it could go all the way up to particular. It seems like a lot of artists pick, monthly is one option, but they'll pick the granularity of creative output. So it could be, could be a song or a video or whatever. And so maybe you want that incentive system. You want this kind of, it's a very flexible arrangement where you may find, like, think of yourself as a persona. Like, why are you doing this, and what's going to keep you engaged to this sort of presence and connection with your audience? Maybe you want it tightly coupled to what you're creating, or loosely, but it's certainly worth considering. And then if it's tightly coupled, is it something that is direct and new for this particular audience? And even then, it's probably a matter of that product has a life where it starts with this audience maybe, and then evolves and goes beyond.
Because you've got the early access feature that they rolled out a while back. So it could be something where it's like, I make this, patrons get it absolutely first. And then after a certain amount of time, it goes to the public website.
Yeah.
I know that's how Jason Shiga did his Demon, his Patreon for his Demon project, the graphic novel.
Right. and that's just thinking of Patreon.com as a venue, because maybe it's about keeping the public stuff separate from Patreon, and Patreon's all private, and then you move it over to Gumroad or Redbubble or whatever presence, Society 6, and on and on.
Yeah. I've thought about taking some of my Fabulous Secret microcasts that I've done, the ones that are like a little less personal and more essay-like, and packaging them up as a Gumroad package. Like, here's like 6 episodes of Fabulous Secrets. Pay whatever you think is, appropriate. Because that's the only thing that I produce for my Patreon that's new. Everything else is totally the selling one sawdust. I wonder if you could, nutshell that for us. What does that mean when you're selling your sawdust?
Oh, sure. And I think I heard that phrase maybe indirectly from Lucy Bellwood, or directly. I forget, right?
I think that's where I first heard it, was from her.
Okay. And, so the idea is that your creative process likely has stages, and you may have comfort in even being a personality and a host for others to see your process in some way. So now you have this ability to just create the things you would normally create, but then as a side effect, have additional products. So stages of artwork, recordings or videos of the artwork in progress, or your narration, what have you, live streams. And so that's the idea is, if you're making wood furniture at a sawmill, the dust on the floor doesn't seem like it's going to be valuable, because you're looking at the end furniture product, and that's what your whole expectation of value is attached to. But then wait a minute, the sawdust on the floor is a whole separate industry, and potential opportunity.
Right. So, like, in the past, I've shared on my Patreon like every stage of the process of the thing I'm making. So, like, the Boulder and Fleet mini comic, A Friendly Game, that I did 2 years ago now. The patrons, while I worked on it, the patrons got the thumbnail sticky note. They got a PDF of all of those pages. They could see that stage of production, then the thumbnail production, and then I every day during October I posted a page of inks on there for them, and then at the end, if I'm not mistaken, I'll have to go back and check. I think I released a PDF of the finished product altogether.
Which there's like each of those stages is a sharing, right? But then the experience of being on the you're receiving a signal from a creator that that keeps happening. I mean, so there's a lot of creators where I see the notifications from the Patreon presences that I support, and it's just like this. It's this heartbeat. It's this living, circumstance where it's like, oh wow, look at so and so's making a thing, and this other person's completed the pencils for a project, and I don't know. It's like that is it's an interesting experience. That's something valuable in and of itself. The sort of collective.
So. Well, it's also like, I mean, were you ever a member of any fan clubs when you were a kid?
Nope.
Oh,
you? How about you?
Yes, I was. I was part of the close personal friends of Al, Weird Al Yankovic's newsletter mailing list. Yeah. And it was just like every once in a while I got this thing in the mail with it was basically like a reminder to buy a new thing from him, upcoming concert appearances. But there's also like a little letter from him, right? Basically saying something that he's up to, some funny thoughts that he had.
I do want to say, so you asked as a kid, right? But as an adult, I did within about 2 years ago, I joined the Iron Maiden fan club.
Oh, cool. Okay, what do you get for that?
Well, there is I think it's like every couple times a year, a sort of behind the scenes magazine of what they're doing. There's some articles and stuff. It's not monthly, but it's not like only just once a year. But so it's a few times a year magazine. They send a holiday card, and then sometimes like an enamel pin, and it might be like a little bass guitar or like a little Eddie character, their mascot. And
that's awesome.
At least I think. Yeah. So there's and you get access to ticket sales early. Which is definitely a benefit.
and used to be part of the REM fan club too. And I remember their mailings were much more lavish than Weird Al Yankovic's. Weird Al's was like, it was, honestly, it was a trifold thing with like tape on it, you know. Even the title of the group was The Close Personal Friends of Al. So the whole thing had this very warm kind of, you know, informal feeling. The REM stuff came, like, they sent you these like really lovely, artfully designed packages, and like one year it would be like a really cool calendar that like was clearly, you know, very thoughtfully designed. Other times it would be like a series of different cool artsy stickers, but it wasn't necessarily like stuff for you to like decorate your place to like promote them. It was like it really had this sense of like you're celebrating art with them. Like they're curating their tastes in a way. That's how the packages felt. But I remember it to me as a guy who was like in the Weird Al Yankovic fan club, I was like, this is fussy, you know. but it was also really. But I think that's part of the decision making process. Are what's the relationship you want with those fans, right? Those supporters.
And it's also acknowledging that you're choosing to engage in that relationship has this. It's wise to get involved in the mechanism and think and be thoughtful about it. Like there's an additional question that Mushin Girl asks is, do you think it is pretentious or presumptuous to ask for patrons to support all of my creative output at a basic level? Is that too broad a scope to solicit? And this is, I find it a very interesting question on a bunch of levels. I identify with it. I think about how, this is me putting my own feelings into it. Obviously, I'm not trying to, you know, apply this to Mushin Girl at all, but I've had, you know, the feeling of presumptuousness or being like almost like I wanted my work to speak for itself. Like when I was creating Art Geek Zoo, it's like, well, there's this work, and then I made products, and then you can support me by buying a product, right? I've had T-shirts and mugs and different things like that, posters. And also the you know, the printed book itself, right? And like this is what we can do to exchange. I'm not going to hold my hand out, right? And I had this big bunch of baggage attached to that. That's me. That's my problem. I don't think I was the only one, but I think it's become a lot more normalized and comfortable and clarified that. I mean, even like, gosh, books like Amanda Palmer's, was it The Art of Asking?
The Art of Asking.
Like, I mean, that's a beautiful lightning bolt that clarifies it, like right there. I recommend that book highly. Like, so, I mean, if you're performing on a corner and you have a hat and you're busking or whatever, that book helped me a lot with, you know, understanding, you know, just
if I were to like try to,
right?
If I were to like book talk it and try to summarize it in a couple sentences, one of the stories she tells early on in the book is when she was busking as this character called the Bride, where she would just stand perfectly still in a bridal gown in a popular common space, like in a park, in a shopping area, that kind of thing, no matter the weather, right? And she would hold perfectly still, and there'd be a hat at her feet, and if anybody put money in the hat, she would bend down and look them in the eye very slowly and carefully, and she would hand them a flower, right? If I'm remembering right, that was the story she told, right?
That's right, yes.
And the language she repeats throughout the book is, I see you, right? And it's like, that's the exchange that's happening, is that people, you know, it's this creating this connective loop between the person who is witnessing and the person who is performing, and having a direct connection between those two people. That's basically summarizes her premise.
And that is a beautiful, wonderful thing. And what a, I don't know. I'm grateful that I, and yet feel kind of slow for picking up such things. You know,
I was there with you, Rob. I mean, in 2003,
So,
when I first started my webcomic, and tip jars were like beginning to be a thing. Like a PayPal tip jar was like a pretty new thing on websites. And I remember I was very much like harumph, crossed arms. Like, I do not ask for handouts. My stuff has value, you know? And I'm like, yeah, but, and I remember I had a super fan who drove 12 hours to meet me at a convention. He bought everything on my table. And he said in these words, like, look, I just want to support you. I wish there was a way for me to just support what you do besides having to do this, you know? And at the same time, even back then, this is like 2005, and I'm still going, harumph, you know, I don't ask for handouts. My stuff has value, you know?
But what proof? And this is the hard thing. It's like, what a beautiful experience to have had that. And yet, how funny are we? Where we can have these situations where our audience is showing this care and support, and our own hangups can get in the way.
Yep.
And we're like, well, and I'm definitely not going to act on what I could be learning right now. And I know one thing I'm going to do, not going to learn from this. So, and thankfully this can happen over time because okay, that could have been a position at one time, but then you can change your mind and then try something. And so the idea of like it being pretentious or presumptuous to ask for someone to support your output at a basic level, I don't think that's the case, right? You can think of it as it's totally reasonable to think of it as the like I'm not going to be unkind to past Jerzy and Rob about doing one level for Lean Into Art. Also, I wouldn't recommend doing it again because I think while it's not pretentious or presumptuous, or your mileage may vary. Go ahead and you're hearing this rationale get unboxed, so maybe this is the very definition of presumptuous and pretentious. But anyway, your call. But what I would say, it's definitely not a great service to the audience in helping them and just helping them through this transaction. I think that's part of our job when we're putting our work out there. And like, how could we chunk that up and make it easier to have different levels of support? Because now you're creating this giant, like a lot of friction, as they say, as far as getting conversion and like getting someone through the steps of a transaction. And you have a fan who's standing there, and now you've given them homework to say, guess what? Judge me, and you come up with the value. And it's like, well, okay, we can do better. We can do better because we're not explicitly saying that and being harumphing or whatever, but we're at least not making it easier.
Right.
So chunking it up and providing different levels is definitely a service.
Agreed. I think that's a nice way of framing it up. So are you ready to take a break before we get into the second half?
Yes. I'm looking at the notes and noticing I just added a bunch of things. So I'm wondering, oh yeah. So what do you think as far as a question that would tie between these two sections? Or are we just going to wing it?
No. What do you have in mind? What kind of question? What would you use to bridge our first half to our second half?
Well, I think there's I think there's a lot that we can unbox based on what's the product, and what are we comfortable with, and then are there multiple platforms that could serve this product well, where it's like there's a part of the question that mentions or it's actually before the questions where Mushin Girl mentions, I just finished my website and I've decided which platforms I'm going to be active on while I try to put out some fan art and fiction. And I think that's an interesting thing to consider, where it's like, okay, Patreon has a job, other social platforms have a job. And thinking of these different jobs and trying to, I guess, get yourself in a good launch position through these different platforms' jobs.
Great. Sounds good to me. All right. So we'll talk about that in 1 minute and 30 seconds. But before we do that, we have to thank some people who make this show possible. And those people happen to be speaking of which, it's the people who support us on Patreon. Yes, patreon.com/leanintoart is the place where you will find it. What is it? Man, you should know by now, but in case you missed it, it's a mechanism by which you can support us for as little as $1 a month. It's a way to say, I believe in these guys, I believe in the stuff they do, and I want to, help make the show more sustainable. And we want to thank 5 people who've been doing exactly that thing. First up, Nate Marcel. Hey, thank you, Nate, for believing in us and what we do. Robert Clemens Jr., longtime supporter of the show. Thank you, Robert. You can find Robert on Twitter at Rob Clemens Jr. Jodelspox or Yodelspox, JODLELSPOX. You can find them on Twitter at JBombArtist. Thank you, Yodels. And Mirjam. Mirjam, thank you so much for supporting us for so long. We really appreciate it. You can find Mirjam on Twitter at MYRJAMVDV. We'll link to all these in the show notes as well. And finally, hey, speak of the devil, Mushin Girl, thank you for supporting us at Patreon. If you want to join them, you can go to patreon.com/leanintoart, where you will find all the shows we make, as well as the extra leans, the shows that we make only for people who support us on Patreon. We just did an episode about the promises or portfolios, and you go to patreon.com/leanintoart to listen to it now. We thank everybody who has been supporting us there. It means a lot.
It really does. And just want to say that I do use a random script to generate those 5 thank you patrons. It's just, there you go. Mushin Girls showed up there. And the Mushin Girls website, we should mention, is www.mushingirl.com. And it's phonetic, MUSHINGIRL.com.
Awesome. All right. I got to find some music to get us to the second half of the show. Here we go. Right. I'll just go to Old Faithful, which I usually use at the top, but so that we can end on high energy. Put it here. Oh, I didn't pull up your dancing that time, Rob, but that's okay. Can't have it every time.
I do it for me. I do it for you, and others are welcome to check it out from time to time. There's literally, so in the intro, one of my favorite things is to dance along with Goku as Giant Ape version of Goku punches through the Emperor Pilaf's castle. So, and that's, and it's time.
That would be even better. It'd be even better if I could pull up the videos of these different stingers, but there's another technological hurdle to overcome, is actually pull up the video. So when I hit the stinger button, the video actually plays on screen for our transitions. That'd be awesome.
And then let's be sure to add green screen so I can be right there with Goku doing the pantomiming the moves. This is a goal, I think. A worthy goal.
And then mine would be me with Bumblebee being best friends, with some Transformers music, which I don't have in the sound bank.
Oh, wait a minute. So yeah, now you would have an awesome, sweet green screen moment, chilling inside Bumblebee.
Yeah, and I would just be talking to him about what happened today. That'd be it. That's like when I was in 5th grade. That's what I daydreamed every day. All right, so time to talk more about products and launching and places to talk about your thing, the different jobs, these different platforms.
And I think we're going to bounce around a little bit between product platforms and trying to get, you're trying to grow an audience to be ready to launch and all that stuff. But then I think it goes way back to a review of the whole the Venn diagram of desirability, feasibility, and viability, which I didn't pull up which episode we've talked about that on which is a few.
I could try to, if you want to summarize what those things are, I can try to find the episode.
Sure. And it was, I think it was when we talked about minimum viable product and minimum lovable product. And this is, let's see, you can think of the idea of building a thing for some audience and, use a Venn diagram of 3 different areas of concern. And each area of concern, you could have a hypothesis related to the viability. Why do you believe that this is something that the market will support? And think of how you could test that viability hypothesis. But then think about the feasibility of it. How well set up are you to make this, and is in a sustainable way, and this is and do it well, and all that. Is how feasible is this for you? But then also the desirability, your audience. It's the what kind of need or desire are you addressing with who you're trying to serve? So what makes this desirable? And there's this, it's all intrinsically, it is intertwined, but then separating those concerns enough, I think, can help you form a pretty strong, super hypothesis to go test. And, addressing each of those areas of concern, desirability, feasibility, and viability. And then the whole idea of minimum viable product, minimum lovable product. This is, one way to go about testing your hypothesis, what you believe about what you're making, is to create some slice or portion or adjacent product. Like let's say like you're doing character designs and you're working on a given project, but then you want to see like which character is more attractive and resonates with who you're trying to reach out to more. And so maybe you mock up some different posters and do some social posts and share them in different venues, or even try to sell the posters and see what kind of feedback and what kind of evidence you can observe that supports your hypothesis about the desirability. And anyway, so yeah, minimum lovable, minimum viable product is about, well, what small thing can you build to test that? And I see there's oh gosh, Jersey pulled up an extra lean.
Yeah, an old extra lean from
Funny.
October. Well, actually, not that old. It was back in the days when we still made them public. It was from 2016, October 21st, 2016, and it's episode 98, Minimum Viable Comic, and negotiating in Street Fighter 2. That sounds like an extra lean episode. But apparently we talked about minimum viable product in that episode, and it had to do with some Boulder and Fleet product development that I was doing.
Oh, fun. And yeah, I know we did a main episode on it too, but it's been a while. So yeah, but it's a topic that comes up because it's a handy mechanism to try to, just get out of your own head about the thing that you probably love what you're making, which is going to probably, affect what how honest we all are about what we're making, and how are we going to go about testing it and whatnot. We often don't include that. We just can make a thing and put it into the world, right? Which isn't, that can be a fine method too. But adding a little more structure about it, you can maybe chain these different things that you make together into a series of learning experiments that you're building toward. Honestly, discovering something that resonates well with your audience.
When you think about what platforms jobs are, I've had posts in the past that I've shared on social media where I ask people to weigh in on something. Like I'm really stuck creatively. And I remember one that I shared a while back on Instagram that got a little bit more traction than usual for me was I had, I think, 5 different haircuts on a character. And I was like,
yeah.
Do you remember this one?
I do.
And I was like, which one are you guys thinking? And like, not only did it get a lot of interaction, but I got a lot of comments as everybody was weighing in on it. And now when I think about like Instagram stories and how you can create polls on there, right? You can do polls on Twitter. And now they have like the whole ask me a question thing on the Instagram stories. It's like there's opportunities there to do like product development with your fans by just sharing stuff in progress. And like a story I know I've told on the Leaning to Art cast before is when I was doing a friendly game mini comic, I think I did 5 or 6 different cover designs. And I had a favorite, but I thought, well, I've got these people on Patreon who are already like really enthusiastic about my work in the first place. Let's see what they have to say about it. And I put the 5 or 6 covers up, and like a good number of them chose a cover that I never thought. Like when I first designed it, I was like, yeah, that's okay. But like they really responded to it, and then they told me why, and I was like, oh, that's a really, really awesome signal to help me navigate this problem. So, in solving a creative problem, my solving of a creative problem also became a product, right? In a way, because it was a thing that people paid money to show up and participate with.
Holy moly! This is a whole area of I don't know, consulting expertise, whatever. It's this concept called co-creation, and you are inherently, by serving and performing, with and in front of an audience and whatnot, and getting the reactions, there's likely a shaping going on, and then you can amp that up like through methods like you described, Jerzy, where earlier on in different creative stages and getting those reactions and feedback, and it's also in tuning into the different signals. It's like, what are you seeing people react to, and seeing and hearing that is both explicit and implicit, right? Where it's like, here's what they're typing and saying to you, but then how many people looked at it, or how many people, shared it and that kind of thing. And like those actions kind of add up to like you can see how much people connected with it. Which, let's see. So this is, so we're thinking that in a way, like this is the whole experimenting, discovering what the product could be and honing it and refining it. This is like way before launch. This is before you're out in the world, right? And then like once you have the product, we get to the questions of, well, what presences are you going to put this within, and what sort of platforms are you directly setting it up to have transactions with, like, Gumroad or Think Custom stuff on your website, or Squarespace or whatever. I mean, you can, we're in such a time of abundance. Square Up, right? So like they have a Square reader where if you sell at your table, you can do an electronic presence as well, and I believe that's all included with their the fee they take per transaction. So many options, but wherever you're going to put this, why you're going to put it there, and then how are you supporting it with this supplemental content and awareness and stuff. And you mentioned something earlier, Jerzy, about the that I think is one of the most influential things related to getting the word out for like getting the visitors to the product that you put somewhere, right? Is that okay, use your social presence. Put it on Instagram, put it on Twitter, put it on Facebook. Well, every single one of these, it has a algorithm, and the algorithm is based on the business model of these different platforms. It's not based on like you, and it's not based on your audience directly.
That's
right?
not what they told me, Rob. They said it was to provide me a better experience on their platform. I took a long sip on that one.
So we're going to have a talk, Jerzy. There's words are funny. Words are funny. So obviously we have platforms that they're amazing. They do honestly, they are wonders of capability and technology, but yet they're mediated. They're not direct experiences. This is an interesting, ongoing thing for us to all to think of individually, but collectively right now, our circumstances, our media is highly mediated. And we are not subscribing directly to RSS feeds for all the individual artists and sources that we think are interesting. At least most of us aren't. I've started to do that again a little bit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And maybe that's another topic to go into, because I want to break the bubble of the algorithms and whatever their conception is of me and all that stuff. But again, separate issue, and a double-edged sword, right? Where this is well-trodden ground, but like we have an if this then that rule that posts things that we post to our leanintoart.com presence to Facebook, and that used to actually drive traffic until the algorithm changed. And Facebook presences for businesses now were the top thing, the top audience to market a product of Facebook ads to, right? And well, doesn't matter if people liked your page, their algorithm is going to filter where almost nobody will see anything you post there unless you pay to put out an ad. This is not a purely, that's not only a complaint. Obviously, platforms exist not just for infinite free public benefit, right? They're companies. They're finding, what is their service? What is their, approach to sustaining themselves? It just was there was a neat window of time where we didn't have to worry about that. But that window is passed. And so now you end up with a situation of I've thought really hard about making a thing. I've done some testing with my close internal audience, or even the sizable audience, whatever you've built so far that you can actually reach to. Then how do you, well, how do you go from there when it's like, now I have the big thing, the big version, and it's ready to go. I'm going to launch my product. Well, I don't know. What do you think of, Jerzy? I've been on a roll here. I'm thinking about slowing my roll.
I was doing the thing where I was kind of slack job, like waiting for the payoff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well, I mean, the payoff is there's so now how are you going to grow your audience? But with when essentially the gateway is paid, you have to pay to get through the gateway.
Mm-hmm.
To reach in mass a larger audience, except for different organic situations. When
Here, I feel like we should step back just for a second, and we were neglectful in not mentioning Tyler James's Comic Launch podcast, where a lot of these topics, and he specifically kind of steers towards launching a Kickstarter campaign, but I think a lot of what he talks about on his podcast is applicable to what we're talking about here. You develop a thing, you build a thing, you're ready to start updating, whether it's a web comic or whether it's like you've got like a schedule of product lines of like, I'm going to make this many little mini comics, or I'm going to make a graphic novel, whatever it's going to be. And one of the things he talks about in there is like managing an email list, like forming an email list, because that's federated. It is not held by any gatekeepers, and it is not, you don't have to pay to play. That's one thing that he recommends that you have. But how do I think about it? I'll tell you how I've been thinking about this project I'm doing with Dan Michigan is that it's, and I've been buoyed by the fact that when I was working on Rockets, like 2 years before I worked on Rockets, I remember when I did work for publishers, I was forbidden. I was highly discouraged from sharing any work in progress. Don't give anything away, right? Wait for the book to come out, and then people have to buy the book to see what it is about, which kind of like flies in the face of the fact that like, well, but you also have, like, movies have trailers, and the trailers give you a sense of what your expectations are. There's something like, I equally rebel against this idea of, I'm not going to ask somebody to invest money in something that is sight unseen, right? Even if they are a believer in what I do, right? I think it's a little weird to say like, well, you can't see any of the book, but I assure you it's good and it's $20. Please pre-order to keep this, make this project happen. So a way that I'm thinking about this new project with Dan is that, yes, we have a sense of like when the official launch of the thing is going to be. I did, like, when I said official, I did air quotes for those who are just listening to the audio. But I'm going to start trotting out little bits and pieces on various platforms now. Again, I'm thinking about that heartbeat. And yes, I'm fighting an algorithm. So to mitigate that, what I do is I have an if this then that rule that auto posts from my Instagram both to my Twitter and to my blog spot. I just double checked my blogger site, which is jdros.com. I just checked while we were talking, and the FeedBurner feed actually collects all the social media posts I feed into my Blogger blog. So there is like one canonical feed of my stuff that you can get. You actually, if you subscribe to the RSS feed there, which is feedburner. Let's see, what is the feed on that? Let me go to it.
It goes to jdros.com.
jdros.com is my website. That's like my repository of all my stuff. I'm just gonna go jdros.com/RSS. I think that does it. No.
Yeah. What's interesting?
it's a FeedBurner link. So it's feeds.feedburner.com/jdrosblogger. But you can link to it in the show notes if you really want to. But anyway, what are you saying, Rob?
Well, so this is interesting. So you're, so you're highlighting that there are different ways to, there's multiple venues. All the different venues have some kind of algorithm that's mediating your connection with whoever you've already connected to there. And some, I would say, the different, not all venues are severe, and it would seem that And this is something where it'd be interesting to gather more data to know, like, it would be neat to, if there was sort of an echo ping type of thing to see like when different people who follow you see a thing. Because then you could probably over time get a sense of like, well, what is the nature of this algorithm, and try to maybe work around it best you can. But it's a little tough without doing, I don't know what you would do to, I don't know, like maybe build a tool or find a tool where if there was a link that your supporters, it's almost like they're playing a game of Marco Polo with you, where you're like, instead of just clicking like, click, you know, click this other link in the post, and then that would log something, and you could see that over time of like, I posted it at this time or whatever. Anyway, that's a tangent, but there's you getting out to all these different venues. You use an if this then that rule. Pretty great. That's a free service.
Should we describe what if this then that is, just to be on the safe side?
Yeah,
I'll pull it up.
Sure. So if this then that is it's a free service that lets you automate stuff related to your different electronic presences and different platforms that have chosen to participate in a if this then that, and then it allows you to sort of wire up one thing to the next thing, where one thing could be a source, and other thing could receive something from that source. And it's like, if you post to Twitter, push it to Instagram. If I post to Instagram, push it to Twitter. If I, you pick your approach. Like, what kicks off your flow of automated posting? Like, where do you post as the original source, and then where does it end up?
Right. So Instagram is my original source, because I like that the platform is largely, the culture that I experience from the people I follow is largely like, this is stuff that I'm doing right now, right? Even the Instagram stories tend to be, this is stuff that I'm doing right now, and it's fun to have it as a window to watch people who do creative work that I enjoy engaging with their creative work in some way, right? And I use you can set up an if this then that recipe. It's super easy to do. It's so easy. But you can set up the recipe to either trigger all the time. Like, every time I post to Instagram, put it here. Like, so for instance, I think I had it for a while archiving all of my Instagram photos on my Flickr account, because Flickr gives you so much storage. I'm like, well, why not just like have all of that be a repository, right? But then, like, for stuff that I want to cross post to my blog or to Twitter, I use a hashtag. So you could say, like, anytime I use the hashtag comics, post it to Twitter, right? Because not everything is for that platform. Like, Twitter is a place where people share their inner thoughts. It's a microblog. It's a place for sharing things that you're thinking about, as well as stuff that you're working on, which is one of the reasons that I don't post to it as much as Instagram. And I was having this discussion with Dan Michigan when we were talking about the project we're working on together. And I said, Facebook is, I really tried to treat it as the place where I interacted with people who I'm, actually close with. People. The metric I came up with is like, have I watched TV with them? But everybody's using it for different purposes, and so I don't feel like there's a social contract, or at least not as distinctive a social contract there as there is with those other platforms. So I tend to feel kind of lost in Facebook. And after they made those changes to Facebook pages, where it's like, well, we're really going to hide a lot of your stuff from the people who follow you unless you pay for these ads, then I saw very little utility in it for me personally.
Yeah, and that's like how you feel about each platform. That's really a key thing, because there's so much of when I think about like writing early businesses that I was a part of, and even when I was the sole proprietor of a business, I would often write things as we, right? And this is like many years ago now, right? Like, let's say 20 years ago. And it was sort of this idea that you're creating this impersonal entity that is providing a product to customer, and then it's all about this. It's very very transactional, and there may be a lot of care and effort into what you share and how you share it, but like it's not personal. It's really emphasizing what this old idea of professionalism, right? And this it's a lot blurrier now. So it's kind of like, are you posting as your name or as a pseudonym, and like where do you feel comfortable being more personal, less personal? Where are your friends in real life versus online friends? Blah. It's quite a tangle. And then regardless of like whatever you post, if you have this sort of ongoing climb that may be, I think everyone's mileage varies, because some of us are in a certain place in time with a certain, well, if you have a well-timed, thing that helps, where a lot of folks are just going for it. There's such a strong product market fit for that comic you made, for that T-shirt or whatever. You can have a burst in growth, in popularity that's organic, and it just sort of, it happens because of, right place, right time, and your effort, right? You were prepared for this, and it happened. Great. That is hard to repeat and predict. And then what is more able to be repeated is, to invest in some kind of ad campaign mechanism, right? And then also invest in things that are not mediated, like the mail list. So then, what's funny here is that, like, I don't know if I think of the concept of launch as like a singular thing, is one of the ideas that I'm arriving at, because
that's where I've been landing recently too.
Because like you may launch lots of things over time and build awareness and reputation that, like, hopefully subsequent launches have an easier initial burst of awareness.
Yeah.
Where I think the nature of launch changes a lot if you already have a large audience.
Well, I think the nature of launch changes depending on what's the. Again, I keep coming back to this idea of like a Kickstarter, something with like a definite deadline on it. And I think of, was it Seth Godin who was talking about this in one of his interviews, where he did like some kind of promotional launch for a thing, and the only way to get like this extra thing he made was to subscribe to his blog or subscribe to his mailing list from this date to this date. Like there was like a clear deadline on it. And when they asked him, why did you do that? Because like people could subscribe anytime. He's like, well, nothing motivates people like a deadline, So, I mean, that I can see, right?
And so what you're trying to do there, I mean, so that's a design technique of, I mean, you're using scarcity. And then so scarcity appeals to us. Like, so when you're doing a design, we've talked about like holistic cognition and design. It's been a while, but you have, so are you appealing to someone's rational brain, emotional brain, or their more survival brain, right? And so things that are like the scarcity of resources and being worried about something being gone, and you care about it and stuff, that's where you are appealing to fear. I'm not saying that, I mean, I'm not assigning any value judgment to that. I think there are some cases where, because of your go ahead and appeal to fear, right? I think especially for me, I find I can rationalize appealing to fear when it's something that is fun and that it's for, joy and celebration, and it's not about, scaring someone into some unethical decision where it's kind of like, no, this thing is coming out and I want a lot of people to know about it. I'm just trying to get you a little more excited. I'm willing to appeal to a little bit of fear and like essentially attach a deadline. And
avocados are 2 for $1 until Friday.
Right. So things, you drive behavior based on scarcity, and there's, stuff goes on sale only for a limited time, or there's a special, you get 2 for 1, or all this stuff. But if it's always there, the meaning goes away, the urgency, the importance goes away, and it's just a natural part of how we, interact with the world. And you, as you design something, you can make use of that. And so yeah, that's what Seth Godin was doing.
Yeah. But other than that, and again, like in the case of a Kickstarter where there's like, we have to get this funding by this date, otherwise it doesn't happen, which is a pretty awesome risk management tool, right? It's like, you don't have the resources, you don't have to do it now. Other than that, I like the conclusion I came to with Dan is that, like, let's plan on having X amount of stuff to show the world around this date. But until then, let's not be hush hush about it. Let's share pieces of the process along the way, and let's start giving this thing a heartbeat now, before like having the heartbeat requires a lot more work.
Well, and here's where, honestly, it's worth mentioning again. Tyler James' Comics Launch podcast is an amazing resource. Tyler James has, and just looking at the kinds of things he has done and experimented with over the years, he is someone who has continually served a variety of audiences and drawing attention to his work through intermingling his different social social presidents. We should all, get our social presidents in order. So, yeah. So he's always had that sort of reinforcing signal among his presences. But then, really in this sort of, skills and business and work that he's built up in trying to help others have successful launches with their Kickstarters. It really emphasizes particular parts of the problem. It's not about having a long, slow, soft launch. It's about being able to succeed in this compressed, urgent time frame and all that. And then how do you get set up to do that well? It's well, you put in the work like you're describing, Jerzy, to build enough of a gathering of folks who believe in and are interested in what you're doing. And then honestly, I think I've been tempted many times to take the classes Tyler puts on about this, which he does seems to be on a pretty frequent basis. And he shares lots of free information in the podcast as well, that the building up of the non-mediated, it's just you and your audience, that email list. Honestly, I'm very convinced that's a good idea. We have a mail list for Lean Into Art. We should probably do something more with.
Yeah, and I have one for my website that I should be doing more with for sure.
And I mean, but that's building up an asset. That's being good at saving, right? That's saying that there isn't an instant payoff. You're not going to see this magical, like, oh, I did the one post that had viral growth and now I have a huge audience. Yay. And now I can reach out to this audience and then and trust that they're going to, buy into the next thing I do. Maybe, right? And honestly, playing the odds game, the chances are the chances go up a lot of having enough conversion the more eyeballs you reach, right? And especially when they're the right eyeballs, they're the people who do have some connection and care to the stuff you do. And then I think Tyler's great kung fu with that is to like not leave it up only to a mediated platform. And that's his other thing too, is that he will use the mediated platform for its strengths, which is to do campaigns, like small ad campaigns. Another class that I would like to take from him.
Yeah.
This is
right.
Yeah.
This was your ad for Tyler James and comixlaunch.com, COMIX launch.com.
Oh, the X. I do forget about that.
Yeah, which I only recently learned the etymology of that. Anne was the one who pointed me at it. It comes from Art Spiegelman. Well, at least I should say Art Spiegelman defined it as, the word may have existed before he came along, the co-mixing of words and images.
Oh.
And Yeah, I used to rebel against the COMIX. I thought like, you're trying to make it into some kind of like cool hip thing, and let's just let it be what it is. It's fine. We're burdened with bad nomenclature. But when I heard it defined as co-mixing of words and images, I was like, oh, I kind of dig that. I kind of really like it a lot. So
Yeah. Okay, that is pretty great. Co-mixing. And I gotta admit, I actually thought it was cool, even though I'm susceptible to the when someone throws an X in a word, I'm like, ooh, what's this about?
I have to wonder how much of that is showing our age. Like, put an X in it and give me a can of Surge and a skateboard. Stat.
Yeah, you've got my attention. I'm listening.
Rob just signed up for my newsletter, everybody.
I did.
All right, are we ready for final thought?
Yeah. Let's go there.
I bet you have an idea of what we could think of for a final thought to tease us out for the next part.
I think there's this. So again, in the spirit of launching, I mean, we've hit a lot of different different points along the way. Being ready with the product that you believe in, you've got the some trail of evidence where you've got this confidence and you're ready to do some kind of launch with it. But then there's this and I think we've covered something that I thought might be final thought, which is the whole like building an audience thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's I think we touched on that pretty well. Like, I'm curious, like, what do we think as far as like what we've shared now, what we've been thinking about that we haven't shared yet, that's like related to and honestly, and you're dealing with this right now with your project with Dan Michigan, and we will, like, and you and I will be dealing with this, of course, too, with the things that we've had on the side burner for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so what about like, what would be our let's see, 3 to 5 step to-do list that we would try to embark on to get the word out next time, to try to have like a good launch?
Okay.
What do you think of that?
We can. I am ready to give it a lean into our try.
Okay.
So, all right. Well, we'll come back and we'll do that in about 1 minute and 30 seconds. But before we do that, we have to thank a few more people who make this show possible. Those people happen to be us. We make things and we think hard about the things that we make, and then we bring all these thoughts to this podcast to sort them out together in front of all of you who download, listen, and watch this thing. And the thing that I hope you will check out today is Science Comics Rockets. And that's at sciencecomicsrockets.com. What is it? It's a graphic novel, 114 something odd pages, about the history and science of rockets as told by the animals who participated in rocket history. So yes, you see, if you're looking at the website right now, you'll see a rooster and a duck. Those are two of the first animals to ever fly in a human-made contraption. In the Montgolfier brothers' balloon. They sent up a balloon with a sheep, duck, and a rooster, and they become narrators in one of the chapters of the book. Rats who flew in rockets, bears who flew in jet planes. A jet is just a rocket that carries its own oxidizer, and even tortoises. And the website has all of our upcoming tour dates where we're going to be appearing, where Ann and I will be appearing to sign the book. But you can also just order the book there. There's a link to an 8-page preview where you can see what the book is all about, and you can order it at bookstores everywhere and on websites, IndieBound and so on. Yeah. So sciencecomicsrockets.com. Rob, you make a game.
I do. And the game is called This Panda Needs You. What it is, it's a really mellow puzzle game. It's all about stacking blocks, dealing with physics and color and shape patterns that they all happen to appear when this little panda is walking through a bamboo forest and encounters an interesting pattern of shapes, which everything's fine. In a way, the puzzle's solved, but it gets unsolved because a cloud comes along, whoosh, knocks everything down. And, well, now it's your job to help this panda put everything back to the way it should be. And so it starts out really easy. It's really our initial, like, I actually co-designed this with my wife, Kate. And the initial design was all about, making an approachable game for a really young audience. So, like, really like early childhood kind of thing, toddlers' first experience with, playing with your iPad and whatnot, or your iPhone. And well, I mean, as we've tested and explored, it seems to have a wide appeal for people who just want a calm game to play with. So it starts out easy, gets a little bit harder over time. There's over 50 levels, and of course, it's on a lot of platforms. If you didn't know, it's on your I mentioned iPhone and iPad. It works on Android phones and tablets, and on your Mac and Windows desktops. And you can learn more about it at this-panda.com, or just go ahead and search for This Panda Needs You in your favorite app store.
And if you have purchased the game, a really wonderful thing you could do right now is give it a rating on whatever platform you purchased it. That helps more people find it. And if you are here because you like the way we think about things, you don't care so much about the stuff we make, that is perfectly reasonable. You are entitled to your opinions. You don't have to like Science Comics Rockets or This Panda Needs You, although we wish you did. But this show is a product we make too, and there's more products like that at leanintoart.com/workshops, where you can download self-contained videos at a price of your choosing, even free. Although, if you get some value out of it after downloading it, the cool thing you could do is go back and purchase it for a friend, and then you're getting a nice thing for a friend, and you're tipping us for the hard work we put into those videos. And that's at leanintoart.com.
And honestly,
workshops.
We do see you, right? I don't have a flower to hand you, but like when you do download this and give us that tip for downloading it, I'm making a call back to the Art of Asking book by saying that.
Yep.
And,
we are notified
really
by this.
it.
We do appreciate it. We appreciate even people who download it for free, because it's thoughtful engagement with the stuff that we make, that we work hard on. If you are watching this video on YouTube right now, giving it a thumbs up helps more people find the show. If you're listening to it in a podcatcher like Apple Podcasts, giving the show a 5-star review. And if you have the time, write a few words as to why you get value out of the show. That helps more people find the show as well. That's a signal on those platforms to let other people know that this is a thing of value. And we appreciate everybody who has been doing those things. It means a lot to us.
It really does. Thank you.
Okay, final thought time.
What do you think? Are there like 3 to 5 things that you've already thought of that were like, wait a minute, quick, get this in as a thing worth sharing that you want to try, or that occurred to you along the way?
Would it be cheating to point at an event that we put on together?
No.
Because it kind of, well, it doesn't really promote us, but it's a thing that we work on. Things like Art Sound Off, right? Right? Because like I keep coming back to this idea that like I get extra context to creators by hearing what they're thinking about their stuff and hearing their voice and hearing them process ideas. Now I know that that's not for everybody, but it's worth thinking about. I think a lot of the attention that I've received a lot of the opportunities I've received over the years came as an indirect consequence of me putting my voice out there in this fashion. It connected me with other creators, like when I did the Comics Are Great show, which was an interview show where, it's like, here's an opportunity for me to reach out to other creators and like touch base with them and find. And I described it at the time as like I'm test driving friendships too. Like if I get along with them really well in the show, I can follow up and maybe have them on again, and then maybe when I run into them at a convention, we'll have something to talk about and hang out together. And friendships have been created in that way. So there's that aspect, which is a networking effect. But then there's also just this way of putting out a signal in a way that I heard, podcasting is something that people can listen to while they're doing other things. Watching a live stream of me drawing, you have to be attentive to that, even if I am talking. Like there's like this sort of this ask of sit and watch, right? Whereas an audio podcast, like you could be doing anything while an audio podcast is playing. So I think that there's something to that. That'd be one. Let's hear one of yours.
Well, I think something I can be better at. This is the whole. What's that saying about the cobblers? Basically the shoemakers' kids have junky shoes. I've got. If my websites are my kids, I've done a bad job. I'm a bad website.
I am there
dad.
with you. I am right there with you. Yes.
And I'm a UX designer by I engage in trade in doing this, and I have great attention and focus when I do this kind of stuff for others. But the experiments I do related to my projects, and it's like that last bit of supporting the project so it lives up to its potential, it's I'm not as good as that for me, like for my projects, right? I can think and propose holistic things and prototype and test and have credible hypotheses for clients. But then when I'm a client, it's like I just run out of steam or something, and I've got to get over that. So what it is, so it's essentially that the banner I want to wave for this action is to make it easy to participate in what I'm providing. Make it easy. So that includes all the different personas I'm trying to reach. If I'm trying to reach, people who are doing sharing in a more official corporate way, I need to make a press kit. If I'm, reaching out to an audience that, I'm making a game for multiple platforms, I need to make sure the website that represents the game has a link to every single platform page, which I don't have right now, which I have to fix. One of those things.
Yeah,
So
my workshops page on my website is not. It like hasn't been updated in like 5 years.
Yes.
I've updated the price section of it over the years as I've given myself raises, but the actual information and the images there are so old, and it seriously needs to be, like you said, like make it as easy as possible to interact with me in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Landing page.
And right, so that's a combination of, so making it easy to participate is having like a purposeful, clear place to land and link to these different things. Because if you are going to do promotion and then you bring someone to a place where now it's hard for them to act on what they tried to get into, that's a problem. Making it easier gives someone a chance to complete acting on this inspiration and their curiosity that they're trying to act on. So meet them where they're at. That's what I want to do better. Make it easy to participate. All right. How about you?
Another
What's
one that
another
I've done in the past, and I did this when I launched my Patreon, is rather than trying to get something that becomes viral, I reached out to my existing network of friends, and this was a challenging thing to do. I felt very awkward in doing this, but I actually sent a group email to a bunch of my fellow peers and friends and said, like, hey, on this date, I'm formally launching my thing, my Patreon for my webcomic. Would you be so kind as to, on that day, put out a social media post about it? So literally asking my friends to, like, all step up and say something. So, like, not counting on this gigantic, like, oh, it's trending now. Boulder and Fleet is trending on Twitter or anything. But more or less of, these are people who have their own followings, their own... there's a sense of trust in their taste. And I tried to remind myself, I'm reminding them of this thing's existence. I'm reminding them that I'm doing this webcomic. They know, but I'm reminding them of it, and I'm giving them a specific date to take an action about it. And I was surprised at who participated. Like, people who I thought, like, no, that person is clearly not going to do it. Like, they like me, I know they respect me, but they're not going to respond to this ask. And they did. So that's another one that I would say, like, is one of those awkward things to do, but I think it has its purpose. Yes, no?
I think that's a really good one. I think there's, to tag onto that, I think there's a couple of other, so in a way, and this may be lumping too many things into this category, but the idea of there are different audiences that you can do this sort of email campaign with. If you have not built up a mailing list, then you still have people their emails, and putting together some appropriate, thoughtful message, and in invitation to participate, show support, that kind of thing. There's nothing wrong with asking, and I imagine you could ask in a pretty terrible way, but like, being optimistic about it, I bet that there's a good way to phrase that and rope in support. But then combine that that email effort with a couple of other audiences. So I don't know if I'm adding one or if I'm adding on to yours, but
Yeah.
we have you have past customers, right? So Gumroad. So if you do
Yep.
sales through Gumroad, you've got emails. So
Yep.
you could do that. And again, something service minded and helpful. It's like if this audience is showing interest and support in what you do, it's probably good news to hear from you, right? So that's something to build off of. And then of course, I mean, we have email lists. The Lean Into Art email list is a little dusty and gets a new subscriber still from time to time. So it's like, well, it's worth making use of. And I'm going to tack onto that then as my next recommendation, which is to find some helpful reinforcement among your projects. So if you have venues and projects and outlets, like for instance, podcasts, if you have more than one podcast, promote the other podcasts, right? Through that. If you have more than one project, promote your other projects through those, that kind of thing. So if you have a blog versus the landing page, if you've got one awesome thing, once you make a second game in like an app store, now you're a publisher that has another, like if someone finds either game or, n number of games, there you go. Now you've again, that's a way, just having projects linked to other projects, as appropriately as makes sense. If there's enough overlap with the audiences and whatnot. So projects can help.
Yeah. I don't know if I have any other ones beyond that.
I've got one.
Oh, good. Please.
Add experiments. Even if aren't going to go big, you don't have to go big or go home. You can go small and figure stuff out. And this is something that I've taken a run at, but I've right around the release of Guitar Fretter, I had honestly great success, and then I never followed up on that with the first, I would say, I forget, somewhere between 2 to 6 weeks. It's escaping me, right? Because this was like a number of years ago. Guitar Fretter is a video game that I put in the world. You can learn more about it at guitarfretter.com. And it's all about making it easy to learn the note positions on a guitar fretboard in an action puzzle game. And it did I put out ads through, Google AdWords, and the AdWords were not expensive for cost per click. And I got great conversion, as in like a lot of the people who clicked on the ad bought the game for a few weeks. And it was a big spike in sales. I don't know why I never... Then I got befuddled as far as like, why are my AdWords so expensive? Quick, shut off the campaign and all this stuff. So just because it got a little difficult, I should have stuck with it and found a way, because this is how you're reaching out to more people. Like, so add experiments, not bad. I mean, have you ever back in your webcomic days done anything like Project Wonderful?
Oh, Project Wonderful. Yeah, I used to do a lot of Project Wonderful ads and trying different combinations
That's awesome.
of images.
How did that work?
What you mean, like how did the service work, or how did my experiments work?
Well, how did it turn out for you as far as experimenting?
It was... I was never able to crack that code. And it was largely to promote a project that I was working on at the time called Sugary Cereals. Do you remember this by any chance?
I do.
And it was a online comics anthology where I and a whole bunch of different creators were creating monthly comic book collections of 24 pages, 3 8-page stories, or like 1 16-page, 1 8-page story, attempting to recapture the feeling of Saturday morning cartoons of like the 70s and 80s and early 90s, when there was Saturday morning cartoons. And they were serialized daily online and then collected in print at indieplanet.com. It was a really cool... I love that. I have a lot of fondness for that project. I thought it was a really neat idea. But it was in 2007, and the idea of doing all ages webcomics was kind of a hard slog. Like getting young kids to read comics online wasn't like a thing yet. And a lot of the ads that the experimentation I did with Project Wonderful, because it was largely, if I remember right, you set parameters of these are the kinds of sites I want it to appear on, but you didn't have like granularity to say like, okay, only put it on like kids sites or COPA.
That might have
compliant
changed
sites.
over time.
Okay.
Because I when I experimented with Project Wonderful, I tried to find specific comics that I got conversion off of, and then I would continue to put ad campaigns on those comics.
Okay. Okay. Maybe I'm thinking of the early days of it or something.
Yeah, I think it did change. I mean, it was, yeah, and I do think it closed down in recent times, but not too long ago.
Okay. But yeah, I was never able to get any like real conversion off of it. But I mean, I chalk part of that up to the climate of webcomics at that time wasn't really like, there wasn't a lot of space for like, hey, kids comics. It was very much like the strip based stuff was popular, and I mean, it was part of the joy of it was that like it was finally like a playing field where you can make like grown up comics. So. But it could have been my designs and the parameters that I chose for placement of the ads. But
and that's the thing. So here you go. Is what gets you out of bed every day thinking about your experiments you're going to do with your ads for the project that you put out into the world?
Right. Yeah, it echoes very similarly to what you were describing earlier, where it's like, this is a lot of work. This is a lot of intellectual power that I really need to be putting into running this anthology. Right.
But inherently, so this is where I've landed is that I've accepted it. Like, this is inherently part of the work. Part of the work is spreading the work. And that's part of the service. So I guess maybe that's my rationalization to for the Rob of the past who would harumph a tip jar for himself but not for others. I no longer have that kind of harumph. Nor and even about the like, I get it that it's a weakness regarding how I'm serving audiences with my projects, and I'm working on improving that.
I think that's a great ending line too. It's a weakness in how I'm serving my audience with my projects. It's part of the service. Is this promotion and this messaging that we have to think hard about. So that's great, Rob. Thank you for this episode. This was good.
Well, yeah, thank you, Jerzy. It's it's a big topic, and I show up to think really hard about this kind of stuff, and it's wonderful. I mean, it's like, this is how we became friends, and also, like, I leave here going like, oh, geez, I've got some stuff to try, and I love it. So thank you,
and thanks to Mushin Girl for giving us the prompt.
Thank you very much, Mushin Girl.
There is a contact link on leanintoart.com. Where you can send us messages like that if you want to. If there's anything you're curious about, we love getting prompts from the leaners. Also on Patreon, on the Extra Lean posts, those become open mic posts where you can post these kinds of wonderings for us. So happy to hear from you. All right. Well, we record the show every week Thursday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Central. It's streamed live on YouTube, then collected as a podcast at patreon.com/leanintoart. We'll be back again soon with another episode. Until then, I have been Jerzy Drozd of leanintoart.com and Jerzy Drozd on Instagram.
And I've been Rob Stenzinger of leanintoart.com and Rob Stenzinger on Instagram.
Okay, bye.
Show notes for this episode can be found at leanintoart.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at the user leanintoart, and you can reach us via email at leanintoart@gmail.com. And remember, leaners aren't wieners. Thanks for listening.